Chapter 1. Elara Voss sat in the dimly lit research lab, her eyes scanning the glowing holographic screen before her. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, trembling slightly with a mix of exhaustion and excitement. For the past 2 years, she had been immersed in a project that could change the trajectory of humanity's future. She wasn't just decoding human DNA. She was unlocking secrets buried deep within it. Secrets that could either elevate humanity to new heights or destroy everything they had worked for. Come on, she muttered under her breath, urging the system to process the data faster. The array of genetic sequences on the screen seemed like an endless puzzle, but Elara could feel she was on the verge of something monumental. The data was almost complete. There was a pattern in the chaos, something that had been overlooked for centuries. Her breath caught as the system finally spat out a result. An anomaly within the human genome, a dormant gene that had never been activated. But this gene wasn't like the others. It wasn't just a relic from ancient evolutionary history. It was something else entirely. A weapon, cleverly hidden within the very structure of human biology. This can't be real, Elara whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. Her research had revealed something more extraordinary than she had imagined. A gene capable of unlocking abilities far beyond anything humankind had ever achieved. Strength, speed, intelligence, potentially even the power to manipulate the fundamental laws of nature itself. It was more than just evolution. It was a weapon built into humanity's very DNA. She quickly began to document her findings, making notes on the implications of the gene's activation. It was too dangerous for the world to know, at least not yet. As Elara pulled up the genetic map on her screen, her hand hovered over the next step, unlocking the sequence to activate the gene. But before she could continue, a sudden beep broke her concentration. Her communicator buzzed, displaying a secure message from her supervisor at the United Earth Federation. She furrowed her brow and opened the message. Elara, stop your work immediately. It's too dangerous. There are forces that are already aware of your research. Trust no one. Complete the project, and the consequences will be irreversible. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She wasn't naive. Elara knew the Federation had its own reasons for caution. But the threat she faced was something more immediate, more pressing. The power she had uncovered couldn't just be hidden away. It was too important. But as her mind raced with the possibilities, a sudden sound echoed in the hallway outside her lab. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Before Elara could react, the doors to her lab slammed open with a deafening crash. She jumped back in alarm, her heart skipping a beat. A group of heavily armored soldiers stormed in, their guns aimed at her. At the front of the group was a man she had hoped never to see again, Varis Drak, the ruthless commander of the Enclave. Elara Voss, he said, his voice cold and calculating. We know what you found. The Federation can't protect you anymore. Her stomach dropped. Drak's face was a mask of arrogance, but there was something more dangerous beneath the surface. His obsession with power. He had been tracking her work for months, and now he had come to claim it. What do you want? Elara demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. Her mind raced, calculating her options. There was no escape. The lab's emergency systems were down, and she was trapped. You're smarter than you look, Varis said, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. You've uncovered something that belongs to us. The gene you've activated, it's ours. Hand over your research, and you can walk away. Refuse, and, well, we'll just take it from you. Elara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she moved slowly to the console, her fingers brushing over the data on her screen. She knew what Varis wanted, the power hidden in her discovery. If he had it, there was no telling what he would do with it. You don't understand what you're asking, she said, her voice tight. This gene, if activated, can rewrite humanity's entire future. It could either save us or destroy us. You can't control it. Varis stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. That's not your decision to make. We already control everything else. This is no different. His soldiers moved in, taking position around her. The threat was clear. She had no choice but to comply, or they would take the research by force. But as Varys took another step forward, Elara's eyes flicked to the hidden compartment beneath the console. She had been preparing for a situation like this, and she knew what she had to do. Without warning, her hand slammed onto the emergency release button. The hidden compartment slid open, revealing a small, encrypted drive. "You're wrong," Elara said, her voice firm now. "No one controls this power. Not you. Not anyone." Varys' eyes went wide with fury as Elara grabbed the drive and bolted for the back exit. But the soldiers were already closing in on her, too fast, too many. She ran anyway, pushing herself to the limit as her heart raced in her chest. The hallways blurred as she sprinted, her mind focused only on one thing: escape. She had to get to the Mars facility, where she could continue her work. There, the data would be safe, hidden from prying eyes, and she could find a way to stop the weapon from ever being used. Behind her, she could hear the soldiers' footsteps growing louder, but she didn't stop. She couldn't afford to. The truth she had uncovered was too important to be lost or destroyed, and she couldn't let Varys, nor anyone else, get their hands on it. As she rounded a corner, she barely managed to duck into a maintenance tunnel before the soldiers caught up. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she crouched in the shadows, clutching the encrypted drive tightly against her chest. The fight had only just begun. Chapter 2. Elara crouched in the dark maintenance tunnel, her pulse thudding in her ears as she listened for the sound of the soldiers approaching. Her breath came in shallow gasps, her chest tight with fear and adrenaline. The encrypted drive she had stolen from her lab was tucked safely inside her jacket, the only tangible connection to the weapon that could change humanity's fate. The maintenance tunnel smelled of old machinery and stale air. Elara's fingers tightened around the drive, the cold metal a reminder of the stakes at hand. She had evaded Varys and his soldiers for now, but she knew it was only a matter of time before they tracked her down. They wouldn't stop until they had what she'd uncovered. The gene inside humanity's DNA was too valuable, and she had just unleashed a power they weren't prepared to control. Her mind raced. There was no way she could go back to the Federation now. If she handed over her research, the weapon would be activated and used for destruction. If Varys got his hands on it, he could reshape the world into his own image, and that wasn't an outcome she could live with. The tunnel stretched ahead, dark and narrow. She had only one option left. She had to reach the Mars facility. It was the only place she could securely store the data and figure out how to stop the weapon from being used. The Mars facility was a forgotten outpost, far off the Federation's radar. If anyone could help her understand the true nature of the gene, it was the team of geneticists and scientists who worked there. With a quick glance over her shoulder, Elara pushed herself into a sprint, ignoring the burning in her legs. The sound of boots on the metal floor echoed through the tunnel as Varys' soldiers closed in, but she was faster, more desperate. She had no time to waste. Elara rounded another corner, her mind calculating the layout of the facility. She had been here countless times, but she had never imagined she'd be running for her life through these same hallways. The walls seemed to close in around her as the weight of the situation hit her fully. The discovery she had made was more than just a scientific breakthrough. It was a power capable of reshaping the very foundation of civilization. And it was in her hands now. The heavy footsteps of the soldiers grew louder, and Elara's breath caught in her throat. She was running out of time. Her only hope was to get to the secure hangar where the Federation kept its last transport ships. From there, she could make her way to Mars, but she would have to fight for every second. Varys' men weren't far behind. She glanced down the tunnel, calculating her next move. A faint glimmer of light broke through the darkness at the end. The emergency escape route. She could reach the hangar through the maintenance shafts and then make her way to the ship. Elara pushed forward, her legs screaming in protest, her body at its breaking point. The sound of boots grew louder behind her, and she could hear the commander's voice barking orders to his soldiers. "She's close. We have her cornered. No one lets her escape." Elara's heart skipped a beat. Cornered. She needed a way out. Fast. She reached the shaft entrance, pulling open the door just enough to slip through. As she moved into the smaller, darker space, she could feel the cold, gritty air pressing in on her. The shaft was narrow and cramped, but it led directly to the hangar. It was her only chance. Her footsteps were muffled now, but she knew she wasn't safe yet. The soldiers would be searching every inch of the facility, and it wouldn't be long before they found her again. The code she had hidden within the encrypted drive was too dangerous for it to fall into the wrong hands. She had to keep moving, but as she moved deeper into the shaft, her mind was consumed with one thought. What if Varys was right? What if this weapon, this genetic power, was the answer to humanity's survival? The gene she had uncovered wasn't just a tool of destruction. It was the next step in human evolution. What would happen if everyone had access to it? The possibilities were endless. Her thoughts were interrupted by a loud clang from behind her, followed by a shout. She's inside the shaft. Get to the other end. Block her off. Elara's heart raced. They were closing in on her, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could outrun them. But she couldn't afford to stop, not now. She reached the hatch at the end of the shaft, her hands shaking as she fumbled for the control panel. With a hiss, the door slid open, revealing the dimly lit hangar beyond. The Federation's last remaining transport ships, their sleek metallic bodies gleaming in the low light, were lined up against the far wall. She was so close. The hangar was eerily quiet. Elara quickly moved toward the nearest ship, her mind racing as she accessed the control panel. The hatch opened with a soft whoosh, and she slipped inside, sealing the door behind her. She didn't take a moment to savor the small victory. There was no time for that. She needed to get airborne, to get as far away from this place as possible. As she powered up the ship's engines, Elara's hands moved with practiced precision. The ship's thrusters roared to life, sending vibrations through the cockpit. She gritted her teeth and prepared for takeoff. But just as she was about to engage the launch sequence, a voice crackled over the ship's comm system. Elara. Varys' voice echoed through the speakers, cold and taunting. You can't run forever. The Federation has already deemed you a traitor. There's nowhere to hide. Give me the drive, and maybe we'll spare your life. Elara's grip tightened on the controls. She didn't respond. Instead, she engaged the thrusters, pushing the ship forward. The hangar doors slid open, and she shot out into the cold vacuum of space. As she left the facility behind, she glanced back, watching as the flashing lights of Varys' forces grew smaller and smaller. The danger was far from over. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Elara felt a small glimmer of hope. She was free. For now. The journey to Mars would be long, but it was her only chance to understand the weapon she had unleashed and, perhaps, to stop it before it was too late. The journey to Mars was quieter than Elara had anticipated. After the chaos of escaping the Federation's pursuit, the endless stretches of space provided a strange peace. The small transport ship hummed beneath her, the soft vibration a constant reminder of her escape. But peace was fleeting. Elara couldn't shake the weight of what she carried, what she had unleashed. The encrypted drive sat at her side, its presence both a comfort and a burden. She had always been a scientist, an observer, a thinker. But now she was something more. A fugitive, a bearer of a weapon whose implications she barely understood. The gene sequence she had uncovered was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It wasn't just a key to a new era of technology. It was the future of human evolution itself. The potential it held for both good and destruction gnawed at her mind, preventing her from sleep. As the ship cruised through the silence of space, Elara activated the onboard console, pulling up the data from the encrypted drive. The symbols and codes flashed across the screen, incomprehensible at first glance, but to her trained eye, the patterns began to form something familiar. It was a gene, a sequence that, if manipulated, could accelerate human evolution. The drive had only begun to scratch the surface of what the gene could do, but it was enough to realize the danger. Her fingers hovered over the keys, the weight of the decision pressing down on her chest. If she could only decipher it completely, if she could understand it fully, maybe she could find a way to control it, neutralize it before it fell into the wrong hands. Suddenly, a voice crackled through the ship's comm system, sharp and startling. Elara, you're not alone in this void. Elara's heart skipped a beat. It was Varys' voice. He had found her, or perhaps he had never truly lost her. His voice, cold and unyielding, continued. We know you're heading to Mars. Your escape was expected, but you can't outrun the inevitable. The Federation will stop at nothing to ensure the weapon is activated. Don't think you can hide from us forever. Elara's fingers tightened around the console as she listened to him. The Federation was no longer a symbol of the government she once trusted. It was a machine driven by power, willing to destroy everything in its path for control over this gene. Stop hiding from the truth, Elara. Varys' voice continued. What you found isn't just a weapon. It's the future of humanity. You can't deny that. Join us, and we'll shape that future together. She scoffed, leaning back in the pilot's seat. You don't get it, Varys. You never did. This isn't about control. This is about evolution, true progress, not the destruction you're planning. She cut the comm feed. It was futile to argue. Varys and his vision for humanity were rooted in control and domination, whereas Elara's work was grounded in the belief that humanity could evolve through cooperation, understanding, and progress. But even as she shut him out, doubts lingered in her mind. Could Varys' plan be as simple as sheer power? Or was there something more to it? She couldn't afford to second-guess herself now, not when the consequences of her next decision could change everything. With resolve, she returned to the encrypted drive, determined to extract its secrets. Her fingers moved swiftly, entering commands and algorithms that would have once seemed impossible to decipher. She had always been good with puzzles, and this one was no different. The strings of genetic data twisted into something more complex with each layer she unraveled. Hours passed. Time seemed to lose its meaning in the coldness of space. As the data shifted, she began to understand its purpose, a perfect sequence, an equation for unlocking human potential. This was what Varys had seen when he spoke of the future. It wasn't just the evolution of humanity's body. It was a mental and genetic leap, a way to rewrite what it meant to be human. In theory, it could eliminate disease, enhance intelligence, and extend life, transforming the very foundation of society. But with this power came grave responsibility. She had seen what had happened when such power fell into the wrong hands before. The Federation wasn't looking to improve humanity. They wanted to dominate it. Elara had never been one to believe in absolute power, but now she had no choice but to face the truth. She was the keeper of this power, for better or worse. Her thoughts were interrupted by the ship's navigation system alerting her to Mars's proximity. They were close. The dust-covered red planet loomed large outside the ship's window. Elara braced herself as the ship began its descent into Mars's atmosphere. The automated systems engaged as the ship's descent began to slow, stabilizing the once-rushed approach. The tension in her body eased slightly, but she knew her work had only just begun. She landed near the facility, a forgotten outpost once used for research, now a sanctuary for those who wanted to remain out of the Federation's grasp. The research team had long been disbanded, but the station remained. It was isolated, quiet, and precisely where she needed to be. Elara didn't waste time. She exited the ship and approached the facility's secure door. After a few seconds, the lock clicked, granting her access. The cold air inside the facility greeted her, sterile and unwelcoming. She stepped inside, her boots echoing on the metal floor as she quickly navigated through the abandoned halls. Inside, the lab was still intact, equipment and terminals unused but functional. She immediately set to work, connecting the encrypted drive to the main console. The screen flickered to life, and she watched as the data streamed across the display. The facility's old equipment was struggling to keep up with the advanced data, but it was enough. Slowly, the truth about the gene was revealed. It wasn't just about evolution, it was about consciousness. This sequence allowed the mind to transcend its biological limits. It was an intellectual evolution, the ability to unlock untapped neural potential, a way to accelerate learning, understanding, and adaptation. It was a door to limitless human achievement, and yet a doorway to a world of chaos. "Elara," a voice said from behind her. She spun around, heart pounding in her chest. Standing in the doorway was a figure she hadn't expected, an ally from her past. Dr. Jonas, a former colleague and the only one who had ever understood her theories on genetic evolution. But there was something in his eyes, something darker than she remembered. "I didn't think you'd come here," Elara said, her voice shaking. Jonas stepped forward. "You know this is bigger than us, Elara. You know what you've discovered." His gaze flickered to the screen where the gene's data streamed. "But you're not the only one looking for it." Fear gripped her. Varys had already reached Mars. He wasn't far behind. The sterile coldness of the Mars facility was like a tomb, its quiet halls broken only by the faint hum of old machinery. Alara's heart raced as she turned back to the screen, watching the data flood the console. Dr. Jonas stood in the doorway, his face a mask of uncertainty, yet his presence alone made Elara feel exposed, as if she were no longer in control of the situation. "I didn't think you would come here, Jonas," she said, her voice low, tinged with suspicion. She turned toward him, the light from the monitor reflecting in her eyes, highlighting the lines of exhaustion that had begun to form over the past few days. "Why are you here?" Jonas's gaze flickered from her to the screen. His eyes, once filled with the curiosity and excitement that had marked their collaboration years ago, now held something darker, something more calculating. His lips curled into a tight smile, but there was no warmth behind it. "I should be asking you the same question," Jonas replied, stepping further into the room. "You think you can control this, Elara? You think you can hide what you've uncovered?" Elara stepped back instinctively, her fingers brushing the edge of the console. Her mind raced. The last time she had seen Jonas, they had parted ways on different paths. She had chosen the scientific pursuit of knowledge for the betterment of humanity, and he had always been more interested in the applications of that knowledge, regardless of the consequences. She could feel the shift in him now, the transformation that had occurred during their time apart. "What do you mean?" she demanded, trying to steady her voice. "I'm not hiding anything. I'm trying to understand it, trying to prevent it from being used by the wrong people." Jonas's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The problem, Elara, is that you're not in control anymore. The Federation, Varys, they already know about the gene. They've known for years. This isn't some new discovery, some accidental breakthrough you stumbled upon. This is a weapon they've been waiting for, and now you're in the middle of a game you don't fully understand." Alara's breath caught in her throat. The weight of his words hit her like a physical blow. She had suspected that the Federation was involved, but she hadn't realized the depths of their knowledge, or how far their reach extended. If they had known about this gene all along, if they had been waiting for someone to find it, she shuddered at the thought. "Why would you help them?" she whispered, the question escaping her before she could stop it. The realization that Jonas might be working with the very people she had fought so hard to escape made her stomach twist. Jonas chuckled softly, the sound cold and hollow. "Help them? Elara, you're missing the point. I'm not helping them. I'm part of something bigger, something that sees beyond your idealistic view of humanity. The Federation has a vision, a plan to advance humanity's evolution. And you, my dear friend, are the key to making that vision a reality." Elara recoiled, the implications of his words settling in like a heavy fog. This wasn't just about power anymore. It was about control. The Federation's goal wasn't just to survive. It was to shape humanity's future on their terms, and she was the one holding the key. A cold, numbing fear gripped her as she realized how deeply she was entangled in their plans. "You're lying," she said, her voice trembling with the force of her disbelief. "You're not that person. You've always believed in the science. You wanted to help people, to make things better." Jonas's expression hardened, and for a moment, Elara saw the person he once was, the passionate, idealistic scientist she had once trusted. But that person was gone, replaced by someone far more dangerous. "The science doesn't care about what you want, Elara. It doesn't care about your morals or your ideals. It's bigger than all of us, he said, his voice growing colder with each word. I've seen the future, Elara. I've seen what we could become if we embrace this evolution, this new step forward. And I'm not going to let you stand in the way of that. Elara's mind raced as she processed his words. She had always believed that science, if applied correctly, could improve the world, could heal and elevate humanity. But what Jonas was describing wasn't improvement, it was manipulation. The Federation's vision wasn't about the betterment of mankind. It was about reshaping humanity to fit their ideals, no matter the cost. And now, Jonas was fully aligned with them, a willing participant in their twisted experiment. Her gaze flickered back to the screen, the gene sequence still flashing across the display. The implications of what she was holding, what she had uncovered, were becoming clearer by the second. This wasn't just about unlocking human potential. It was about rewriting the very nature of what it meant to be human. And once it was unleashed, there would be no going back. You don't understand, Elara said, her voice low but firm. This gene, it's too powerful. It's not just a tool for the Federation to control us. It's a way to strip away everything that makes us human. If they succeed in this, if they push humanity down this path, we'll lose everything. Jonas didn't answer immediately. He just stood there, watching her with an unreadable expression. Then, finally, he spoke, his voice filled with cold finality. It's too late, Elara. The Federation has already set things in motion. They're not going to stop, and neither are we. Before Elara could respond, the facility's alarms suddenly blared, piercing the silence. Red lights flashed across the walls, bathing the room in an eerie glow. She froze, her heart pounding. Something was wrong, something big. The Federation had found them. Varys' threat had been more than just empty words. Elara, you've done enough, Jonas said, his tone now laced with urgency. It's time to leave. But Elara didn't move. She couldn't. The weight of what was happening, the knowledge of what she was carrying, held her in place. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was the fulcrum on which the fate of humanity would pivot. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hall outside, growing louder by the second. Elara's pulse quickened. There was no more time for hesitation. Whatever Jonas's intentions were, they no longer mattered. She had a choice to make: fight or surrender. As the door to the lab slammed open, Elara made her decision. She turned, her mind racing for a way out. The next move was hers, and she would not let the Federation control her future. The door behind her slammed shut, but it was already too late. The game had changed. Elara's heart pounded in her chest, the noise in her ears deafening as the footsteps outside the lab door grew louder. Her mind raced. Jonas had set something in motion, something far beyond what she had anticipated. The Federation had already infiltrated, and now they were closing in. She looked down at the console, the flashing gene sequence a constant reminder of the weight she carried. The fate of humanity, of everything she had worked for, rested on her shoulders. Her hand hovered over the console's shutdown button, but hesitation lingered. Was she ready to destroy the only lead she had, the key to potentially stopping the Federation? Elara. A voice broke through her thoughts. It was Jonas again, his tone softer, almost pleading now. You don't understand. We don't have to fight them. We can join them. Together, we can bring about a new age of humanity. Her gaze flickered to him, and she shook her head. There was no way back. She had trusted him once, but that trust had been shattered. She could see it now, the cold ambition in his eyes, the determination to use the gene for personal gain, for control. This wasn't about saving humanity. This was about power. The Federation wasn't interested in evolution for the sake of progress. They were interested in using the gene to enforce their vision, their dominance. No, Jonas, she said firmly, her voice cold. This isn't what I signed up for. You've lost your way. Jonas's expression faltered, just for a moment, but then it hardened. You're making a mistake, Elara. You're too blinded by your idealism to see the truth. She stepped back, her gaze sweeping over the lab, her thoughts racing. The truth. He was right about one thing. She had to make a choice now. The Federation was already here. Her choices had always been between advancing science for the betterment of humanity or preserving its freedom. But now it wasn't just about science. It was about the control of that science, the fate of billions, and whether she was willing to sacrifice her morals to ensure that the gene didn't fall into the wrong hands. The door slammed open. Elara spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the concealed weapon she had stashed beneath the table. But there was no time to act. Two soldiers, dressed in the black insignia of the Federation, stormed into the room, their weapons drawn. Elara Rios, one of them growled, "You're coming with us." She tensed, her fingers gripping the edge of the table, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Jonas stepped back, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I told you, Elara. It's over. Let them take you. There's no point in resisting." His betrayal stung, a painful ache in her chest, but she didn't let it show. She had no intention of going down without a fight. The Federation had underestimated her. She would show them that she wasn't just some pawn to be moved around at their will. "What if I refuse?" she asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The soldiers laughed, a sound that grated against her nerves. "You don't get a choice, Dr. Rios." One of them stepped forward, closing the distance between them, but before he could react, Elara sprang into action. In one fluid motion, she grabbed a nearby glass vial, throwing it in the soldier's face. The liquid inside exploded with a deafening crack, momentarily blinding him. The other soldier rushed to grab her, but she was faster, ducking under his arm and striking him with a quick elbow to the ribs. Elara didn't wait to see if the soldiers were down. She bolted for the door, her pulse pounding in her ears. She had to escape, find a way to get the gene to the right hands, before the Federation twisted it to their will. As she sprinted down the narrow hallways of the facility, her mind scrambled for a plan. She had a limited amount of time. The Federation had all but sealed off the area, and it wouldn't be long before they sent more reinforcements. Her only option now was to reach the escape pod bay on the far side of the facility. The pod could take her to the outer system, where she could figure out her next move. She could contact the Resistance, find allies who still believed in the freedom of knowledge. She could stop the Federation from controlling the gene. But there was one problem: Jonas. She hadn't counted on him being this deep in the Federation's pockets. If he was truly aligned with them, then he would stop at nothing to ensure she didn't escape. He would hunt her down, just like the rest of them. "Elara." Jonas's voice echoed through the hall, sharp and frantic. She didn't turn back, but she could hear his footsteps growing closer. He wasn't going to let her get away. He had already made it clear that he believed in the Federation's vision, and now she was the enemy to be eliminated. She pushed herself harder, adrenaline fueling her muscles. The escape pod bay was just ahead. She could see the door up ahead, glowing faintly in the dark. She wasn't going to make it easy for them. She couldn't let them win. As she reached the door, she slammed her hand against the release panel, the door opening with a hiss. But just as she stepped inside, a figure appeared in the doorway. "Jonas." "Elara, wait." His voice was tight, filled with desperation. "I don't want to do this. We can fix this. Together, we can make it work." Her chest tightened at the sound of his plea. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that the person she had known still existed somewhere beneath the surface. But that person was gone. The Jonas she had known had been swallowed by ambition, by the Federation's promises of power and control. "No, Jonas," she said, her voice breaking with the weight of the words. "I've already made my choice." She pushed the button to seal the door, blocking him out as she ran to the controls of the escape pod. The engines roared to life as the pod lifted off, the facility shrinking into the distance. Elara leaned back in her seat, her heart pounding, her mind a blur of fear and resolve. She had made her choice. The future of humanity, her future, now depended on what came next, and she wasn't going to let anyone stand in her way.